Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and with iOS 26, Apple introduced adaptive power to go along with optimized battery charging. However, I get a lot of questions still as to why they aren't working for some all of the time. This has caused some confusion around how the features actually work, and many ask me why it's not working for them. Additionally, with the introduction of iPhone 15 models and now iPhone 16 and 17 models, Apple added the 80% charge limit option, and iOS 26 added even more options, and again it has some things you should know about. Now, Apple recently updated their documents a couple weeks ago, detailing adaptive power, optimized battery charging, and setting iPhone charge limits, managing it yourself, and how it works in general, so I wanted to share that with you. The first thing is adaptive power. Now, adaptive power is on by default on the latest iPhones, with iPhone 17, iPhone Air, iPhone 17 Pro, and iPhone 17 Pro Max. However, adaptive power is actually available on the iPhone 15 Pro, 15 Pro Max, and iPhone 16 series devices, including the 16e up to the 16 Pro Max. Now, adaptive power can work silently in the background or notify you when it's optimizing power and could affect your performance of the phone. However, one thing you may not have known is if you turn it on, so if you go into settings, go to battery, wait for it to load here, scroll down, and you'll see power mode, and there's adaptive power and adaptive power notifications. But the one thing you may not know is it takes at least 7 days to learn your charging habits, so it won't engage before then, according to Apple. They actually list that on their website here, so if you scroll down, it talks about adaptive power and when turned on adaptive power and what it does, as well as if we scroll all the way down here, it says adaptive power needs at least 7 days to learn your charging habits, and you'll see exactly what I stated before. So it does take some time to kick in, it will work eventually, and it will notify you if you choose the option to let it notify you. If you don't want to know about it, just turn it off and it will work silently in the background. Now, it can affect the way your phone works. For example, it says when your battery usage is higher than usual, iPhone can extend your battery life by making performance adjustments, such as lowering display brightness, allowing some activities to take longer, or turning on low power mode at 20%. So keep that in mind, it can actually slow the phone down to extend that power. If we go back here to the website about adaptive power and scroll down here, you'll see it says it makes performance adjustments. Again, it lowers the screen brightness by a small amount and limits background activity as well. So just keep in mind that it can actually throttle the performance of your phone when it's actually in use. And you can of course turn this off if you don't want it. You'll generally find that your phone feels a little bit smoother when it's off. When it's on, it will extend your battery life though. The next thing is optimized battery charging. Apple introduced optimized battery charging with iOS 13, and it's improved it ever since to help prolong your battery health over time. All batteries degrade over time, whether it's an iPhone, Android phone, or electric car, and that hasn't changed for years and won't change until someone develops new battery chemistry that just doesn't degrade. Now, there's a few things you should know though. The first thing is if we go into settings, go to battery, wait for it to load here, scroll down, go into charging, and there's a few different options here. They've refined this a little bit, but you can see charge limit, and it can now suggest a charge limit as well. So it's highlighted 95% based on my overall usage, and you can of course adjust this in 5% increments. But based on my typical daily usage, it's recommending 95%. Of course, you could adjust it down to 80, but make sure you have this adjusted to whatever works best for you based on how much battery you use. Now, I typically like to set it to 100% and leave it on optimized battery charging. But either way, sometimes it may charge over whatever you have it set at with charge limit to help prolong the overall battery life. Sometimes recalibrate the battery, it will ramp it up after a while. So for example, if you have charge limit set less than 100%, your phone will occasionally charge to 100% to maintain accurate battery state of charge estimates according to Apple. Now, like I said, I like to use optimized battery charging, and what this does is it says when the charge limit is set to 100%, allow iPhone to wait to finish charging past 80% until the time you need to use it. But there's some things you need to know about this. So this will reduce wear over time and basically charge to 100% by the time I wake up after it learns my usage patterns. Now, if we go to Apple's website about this, you'll see it says about charge limits and optimized battery charging on iPhone. Now, according to Apple, the algorithm aims to make sure your iPhone is still fully charged when unplugged. For example, you put your phone on the charger at night like me, take it off in the morning like I mentioned, and you basically have a regular routine, and it holds 80% for most of the night, then charges to 100 before you leave. However, when it's active, you'll get a message on your display saying when it will be ready to go by. However, oftentimes you won't see this, as sometimes the schedule isn't the same every night. So just keep in mind you may not already see that. However, there's a few things you need to know in order for this to work. For example, if we scroll all the way down to the bottom of this document, it says optimized battery charging needs at least 14 days to learn your charging habits, so it won't engage before then. Also, your iPhone needs to experience at least 9 charges of 5 hours or more in a given location for optimized battery charging to engage. And there's even more that goes along with this. For example, you need to have a few features turned on. So if we go back into settings and we go back here, we need to have location services on. So that's found under privacy and security, and then you have location services. If this is turned off, optimized battery charging will not work. Also, system customizations must be on as well, and that's also found under location services. Scroll all the way to the bottom, go to system services, and then again here, you'll see system customization. If this is disabled, optimized battery charging won't work. In addition to this, significant locations needs to be enabled. So make sure you basically have most of your system services and locations enabled. Significant locations and routes, if that's on, you'll be able to use this feature. If you've turned it off based off suggestions of other videos or other things, you won't be able to use optimized battery charging. Now, if you're wondering how optimized battery charging affects your battery health, this is my iPhone 16 Pro Max I used for an entire year from the launch date all the way up until the iPhone 17 Pro Max launched. I only used a couple phones in between when I was testing them, and if we take a look at settings, battery, and battery health, you'll see I'm at 93% capacity with 341 cycles. This is pretty typical of what you see whether people are using optimized battery charging, setting it to their own charge limit. We're seeing about the same degradation, so it really works pretty well overall. However, charging it maybe at 5 watts from 20% to 80% on your own definitely could lengthen that over time, but most people don't really want to manage that. And for the most part, you don't need to, as you won't see a huge change between managing it or just having the iPhone manage it. As far as other power modes, well, we have low power mode, but I would highly recommend against using this unless you need to get to a charger. That's really what it was designed for. When you get down to about 20%, if you need to get to a charger, that will extend your battery until then. And under battery, and then again power modes, low power mode actually tells you this now. It says iPhone will temporarily reduce some background activities, processing speed, display refresh rate and brightness, and limit certain functions such as 5G, iCloud syncing, mail fetch, and more. It will actually reduce ProMotion down to 60 Hz. It will slow everything down and really slow the phone down in general, just to get you that extra battery so you can get back to a charger. I see a lot of people use it regularly, and unless you really can't get to a charger, I would highly recommend against it as it changes the overall experience on the iPhone. Now, when it comes to chargers, I did want to mention a few different things here. I typically use a Belkin charger on a nightstand, so something like this. Apple, of course, will recommend their own chargers, but they say if the phone is getting very hot, you may want to take a case off of it. But I typically use something like this on my nightstand, just the one that has more of a cross T. I'll link it in the description. When I'm in the car, I use ESR chargers, and then when I need really high power, I typically use Anker chargers. For example, this charger here that you can see is one I use all the time. It's a 100-watt charger. It's got a couple different ports, and your phone will actually limit the charging speed based on the phone's need, not based on the output of the charger. So if you're using a 100-watt MacBook charger, for example, it will still only charge at its limit that it has for the current battery percentage as well as the overall heat. So it takes all of those factors in mind, but I typically use one of the Anker chargers as they've lasted really well over time and work really well. But of course, you could use Apple's chargers as well. So that's everything Apple updated with adaptive power, charge limits, and how they work. Hopefully that gave you a better understanding of how those different features work on your phone. And I'd love to hear from you whether or not you're using adaptive power mode, or maybe you're using the overall charge limits, or just using optimized battery charging, or just have it turned off in general. I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Of course, I'll link this wallpaper in the description like I normally do. And if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.